On the night of my retirement gala, surrounded by crystal chandeliers and 150 guests, I collapsed on a ballroom floor. My daughter stood 3 feet away with my heart medication in her purse. She didn't move. She told security I was faking it for attention. I thought I was going to die. Then a young man knelt beside me and whispered something that changed everything. What he showed me didn't just prove my daughter's betrayal. It revealed a secret she'd been hiding for 6 years and a family I never knew I had. Before we continue, I just want to say thank you for being here with me. If this story resonates with you, take a moment to comment below and let me know where you're watching from. It really helps keep this space active and connected. Also, a gentle note, this story includes dramatized elements created for storytelling and educational purposes. Any resemblance to real people names or situations is purely coincidental, and the content is intended for reflection and learning. The navy gown hung on the back of my bedroom door like a question I wasn't sure how to answer. Retirement. The word felt foreign even after 6 months of planning. I'd spent 40 years building Sinclair Properties from a 2-person operation into one of Chicago's premier commercial real estate firms. 40 years of 14-hour days of deals closed over drinks at the Drake of watching the skyline grow taller, with buildings that bore my fingerprints if not my name. And now at 67, I was supposed to just stop. The penthouse was quiet in that particular way it had been since Robert died. 4 years now, and I still sometimes turn to tell him something before remembering he wasn't there. The cancer had taken him slowly, giving us time to say goodbye, but not enough time to say everything. 2 years after losing him, my body had decided to betray me too. Chronic atrial fibrillation, the cardiologist had said an irregular heartbeat that left unchecked could trigger a stroke or worse. The medication kept it under control. Digoxin 0.125 milligrams every evening at 8 p.m. sharp. Miss a dose, and my heart could slip into a dangerous, rapid rhythm within hours. I kept backup pills everywhere, one in my purse, one in my office desk, one in the car. Robert used to tease me about my contingency plans for everything. Now those plans were the only thing standing between me and a medical emergency. The doorbell rang at 2 o'clock exactly. Vanessa stood in the hallway wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than my gown. At 30, my daughter had inherited Robert's dark hair and sharp cheekbones, but something about her expression had grown harder over the years. Colder. "Hi, Mom." She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, her designer handbag swinging from one shoulder. "You're not even dressed yet. The gala doesn't start until 7. I closed the door. "Would you like some tea?" "I can't stay long." She set her bag on the kitchen counter, pulled out her phone, and started scrolling. "I just wanted to check in. Make sure you have everything you need for tonight." There was something performative about the gesture, like she was reading lines from a script titled, "Dutiful Daughter Visits Aging Mother." "I'm fine," I said. "Brennan reviewed my speech yesterday. The guest list is finalized. The event coordinator at the Drake has everything under control." "What about your medication?" Vanessa glanced up, her expression unreadable. "You're supposed to take it at 8, right? You'll be in the middle of the reception." "I have it." I gestured toward my purse on the dining table. "I'll take it between the cocktail hour and dinner service." "Let me hold on to it." She reached for my purse before I could stop her pulling out the small amber bottle. That way you don't have to worry about it during all the speeches and photos. "I'll give it to you when it's time." Something in her tone made me hesitate. "Vanessa, I can manage my own." "Mom." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Let me help. Please. It's the least I can do." I watched her tuck the bottle into her handbag. The gesture should have felt caring. Instead, it felt like something slipping through my fingers that I couldn't quite catch. "Actually," I said slowly, "I've been meaning to talk to you about something. I'm updating my will next month. With the retirement, it seemed like a good time to review the estate planning." "Make sure everything's in order." Vanessa's smile froze. "What kind of updates?" "Just adjustments. Charitable foundations. Long-term care provisions." I met her eyes. "I want to make sure the company legacy continues even if I'm not running it anymore. You're not cutting me out, are you?" The question came out too sharp, too fast. "Of course not. You're my daughter. But there are other considerations now: the Robert Sinclair Memorial Foundation, scholarships, community development projects. She stared at me for a long moment, her jaw tight. Then she picked up her bag and headed for the door. "I'll see you at the gala," she said without looking back. After she left, I stood in the sudden silence and looked at the photograph on the mantel. Robert and me, 20 years younger, standing in front of our first building, his arm around my shoulders, both of us grinning like we'd conquered the world. I'd kept one digoxin pill in my evening clutch, just in case. I told myself I was being paranoid. I wasn't. The crystal chandeliers of the grand ballroom blazed overhead like 1,000 captured stars, their light dancing across marble floors and the faces of 150 guests. I stood near the entrance at 7 o'clock, sharp greeting colleagues and board members as they filed in, wearing their finest black tie attire. The Drake Hotel had been my choice for tonight. Robert and I had celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary in this very room, with these same windows overlooking Lake Michigan's endless dark water. Tonight the view reminded me less of celebration and more of something slipping away into that darkness. Mrs. Sinclair. A young man appeared at my elbow holding a glass of champagne on a silver tray. "I thought you might need this before your speech." I recognized him, Ethan Brooks, one of the event coordinators who'd been working at the Drake for the past few years. Late 20s with an earnest face and kind eyes that actually seemed to see people rather than through them. He'd checked on me 3 times already this evening, bringing water without being asked, adjusting the microphone stand, to my height small gestures that spoke of genuine care. "Thank you, Ethan." I took the glass, though I had no intention of drinking it. Alcohol and my medication didn't mix. "Everything looks beautiful. We wanted it to be perfect for you." He glanced around the ballroom with obvious pride. 40 years deserves nothing less. I smiled, but my attention had already drifted across the room to where Vanessa stood near the bar phone, in hand, barely acknowledging the guests who tried to engage her. The amber bottle was nowhere visible. Probably still in that designer handbag she'd carried out of my apartment 5 hours ago. The evening progressed in the predictable rhythm of corporate celebrations. Appetizers circulated. Champagne flowed. Old colleagues shared stories I'd heard a dozen times before. At 7:30, I took the microphone for my speech. 40 years ago. I began my voice steady despite the weight pressing against my chest. My late husband Robert and I walked into a rundown office with nothing but a business loan and a dream that probably looked ridiculous to anyone with common sense. Polite laughter rippled through the crowd. I found myself looking past them toward the windows and that dark water beyond. Robert used to say that the buildings we created were monuments to what's possible when you refuse to accept limitations. I paused, my hand resting lightly on the podium. But the real monument isn't made of steel and glass. It's made of people, of trust, of the families we build not always through heritage, but through choice, through showing up when it matters most. I let my gaze land on Vanessa as I said those last words. She was scrolling through her phone, not even pretending to listen. "Thank you," I concluded, "for being part of mine." The applause was warm, genuine. But as I stepped away from the microphone, I felt it a flutter in my chest, irregular and insistent. My hand went reflexively to my breastbone. 7:45, 15 minutes until my dose. I caught Vanessa's eye across the room and touched my wrist, our signal, the one I'd explained to her that afternoon. "I need the medication." She looked directly at me. I saw recognition in her face. Then she turned away, continuing her conversation with a man I didn't recognize, laughing at something he'd said. My heart stuttered again, harder this time. Ethan materialized beside me, his expression concerned. "Mrs. Sinclair, are you all right? You look pale." "I'm fine." The lie came automatically polished by decades of maintaining composure. "Just need to step backstage for a moment. Too many people you know." "Of course, can I help you?" "No, thank you. I'll just be a minute." But as I moved toward the back of the ballroom, I checked my watch. 7:50, 10 minutes. Across the room, Vanessa laughed again, her handbag and my medication nowhere in sight. My heart beat faster, and this time I couldn't tell if it was the condition or something closer to fear. 7:58. I found Vanessa near the service entrance, half hidden behind a velvet curtain, checking her phone. The ballroom noise felt distant here, muffled laughter, clinking glasses, the string quartet, playing something classical and forgettable. Vanessa! My voice came out thinner than I'd intended. I need the medication. She looked up slowly as if I'd interrupted something important. What? My medication. It's almost 8. My heart was racing, but not just fast. Erratic, irregular, like it was stumbling over its own rhythm. The pill, from my purse. I need it now. Understanding flickered across her face. Then something else. Something that made my stomach drop. You're fine, Mother. She slipped her phone into her bag, the same bag that held my medication. This is exactly what you do. Create crises for attention. I'm not, the room tilted slightly. Vanessa, please. My heart. Your heart is fine. You took your medication this morning, didn't you? She smiled, but it was the smile you'd give a child throwing a tantrum in a grocery store. You just want everyone to stop what they're doing and focus on you, even tonight, even at your own retirement party. I reached for her bag. She jerked it away. Give me the pills. No. The word hung between us like a slap. Someone was watching. I caught movement in my peripheral vision, several someones actually. Staff members frozen mid-task. A board member's wife with a champagne flute halfway to her lips. Ethan Brooks, the young event coordinator, standing near the entrance with his phone out. Vanessa. I tried to keep my voice steady, even as my vision started to blur at the edges. The irregular rhythm in my chest was accelerating each beat, unpredictable, chaotic. I'm not being dramatic. I need that medication. If I don't take it, you'll be fine. She was already turning away. You always are. My knees buckled. I grabbed for the wall, but there was nothing there except air and the sudden terrifying realization that I was falling. The floor came up fast, cold marble against my cheek, the world sideways and wrong. Voices. Hands on my shoulders. Someone saying, call 911, and someone else saying, give her space. And through it all, Vanessa's voice distant and cold. She does this. She's always been manipulative. I couldn't speak. Couldn't explain that my heart felt like it was slamming against my ribcage at random intervals. No rhythm, no pattern, just panic. That I could feel my pulse in my throat too fast and uneven, like my body was trying to tear itself apart from the inside. My clutch. I dropped it when I fell. Where? Hands. Gentle ones this time. Ethan Brooks knelt beside me, his face pale but focused. He pressed my clutch into my trembling fingers. Inside pocket, I managed to whisper. He found the backup pill and handed it to me. I swallowed it dry, tasting bitter chemicals and desperation. The pill wouldn't work fast enough on its own, I knew that, but it might buy me time. Sirens, somewhere far away getting closer. Vanessa stood by the exit, arms crossed, watching paramedics rush toward me with a stretcher and equipment. She didn't move, didn't offer to help. Just stood there like I was performing a particularly unconvincing death scene in a bad play. The paramedics arrived and immediately started an IV line. One of them pushed something that made my chest feel like ice, and within seconds that felt like years. My heart rhythm began to slow, began to find its beat again. By then the edges of my vision had gone soft and gray, but I was still conscious. They loaded me onto the stretcher. Through the fog of shock and medication, I saw Ethan filming with his phone. Filming Vanessa. The ambulance doors closed on the ballroom on the retirement party on 40 years of my life, culminating in this, my daughter standing in a parking lot, watching me nearly die, and feeling nothing at all. I closed my eyes against tears that had nothing to do with physical pain. The beeping started before I opened my eyes. Steady, rhythmic. The kind of sound that meant machines were doing the work my body couldn't. I tried to move and found my arm tethered to an IV line, the thin tube snaking up to a bag of clear fluid hanging beside me. Northwestern Memorial Hospital, ICU. The clock on the wall read 10:36 p.m. I'd been unconscious for nearly 2 hours. A doctor appeared, young efficient, her name tag reading Dr. Patel. She explained what I already knew but needed to hear anyway. My atrial fibrillation had converted to rapid ventricular response. My heart rate had climbed above 150 beats per minute. Dangerous territory. The backup dose you took helped, she said, checking the monitors. but it was the paramedics' IV adenosine that actually converted your rhythm back to a controlled state. Another 20 minutes without intervention, and you could have had a stroke or gone into cardiac arrest. The words settled over me like ice. You're very lucky, Dr. Patel added. I didn't feel lucky. Can I ask why your daughter was holding your medication? Her tone was carefully neutral, but I heard the question underneath. Why would she keep it from you? I closed my eyes. I don't know. She left after checking my vitals. I was alone with the beeping and my thoughts when the door opened again. Ethan Brooks stepped inside, hesitant, carrying something small and rectangular. Mrs. Sinclair, he glanced at the monitors. I'm sorry to bother you. I needed to show you something. I nodded, too tired to ask questions. He pulled a chair close to my bed and held up his phone. I recorded what happened backstage. I thought you might need it for legal reasons, maybe. He pressed play. The video was shaky but clear. The timestamp read 7:58 p.m. Me leaning against the wall, visibly struggling. Vanessa, standing 3 feet away, her designer handbag clutched to her chest. My voice thin and desperate. Vanessa, I need the medication, now. Vanessa's response cold and cutting. You're fine, Mother. This is exactly what you do. Create crises for attention. The video captured my hand reaching for her bag. Vanessa pulling back, my knees buckling. 5 or 6 people rushing forward, including Ethan. Vanessa walking away, her heels clicking on the marble floor while I collapsed behind her. The screen went dark. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe around the tightness in my chest that had nothing to do with my heart condition. There's something else, Ethan said quietly. Something I need to tell you about Emma. I turned to look at him. 6 years ago, he said carefully, I found a baby outside the emergency room entrance at Providence, Portland, late January. She was maybe 3 days old, wrapped in a hospital blanket with a handwritten note that said, I can't do this. Please give her a good life. My breath caught. I took her to the police, child services. They couldn't find the mother. The birth certificate listed her as Jane Doe. No father. They were going to put her in the system. He looked down at his phone. I couldn't let that happen, so I applied to foster her, and then I adopted her. What does this have to do with... He pulled up a photo. A little girl with dark curly hair and enormous brown eyes holding a stuffed rabbit and grinning at the camera. Tonight, when I saw your daughter up close, when I saw her signature on the incident report, I recognized the handwriting. His voice was steady, but his hands shook. I've carried that note with me every day for 6 years, laminated it, kept it in my wallet. Emma asks about it sometimes, wants to know what her birth mother wrote. I've stared at those words so many times, I could draw them from memory. He pulled out his wallet and extracted a worn, laminated card about the size of a credit card. The paper inside was creased, but preserved the blue ink still legible. I can't do this. Please give her a good life. Then he pulled up another image on his phone, Vanessa's signature from the incident report, large and clear. Every loop, he said quietly. Every slant. The way she crosses her T's without lifting the pen. The slight backward lean on the capital letters. Identical. The room tilted. I think Emma is your granddaughter, Mrs. Sinclair. I stared at the laminated note, then at the photo of Emma, at the curve of the child's cheek, the shape of her smile, the way her hair curled exactly like Robert's had when he was young. I pressed my hand to my mouth as the monitors started beeping faster. My daughter had tried to let me die, and she'd abandoned her own child 6 years ago. I have all the records, Ethan said. The birth certificate, the police reports, everything. He met my eyes. What do you want to do? Morning came with hard evidence. I'd barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Vanessa's face cold and calculating, and Emma's smile bright and innocent, superimposed over each other like a double exposure. Ethan returned at 7 a.m. with a worn manila folder and 2 cups of terrible hospital coffee. I brought everything, he said. We spread the documents across my bed like pieces of a puzzle I'd never known was incomplete. The birth certificate was stark in its bureaucratic simplicity. Emma Rose Brooks, born January 28, 2018. Mother Jane Doe. Father unknown. Place of birth Providence. Portland Medical Center, Oregon. Beside it, the note no longer wrinkled after 6 years of being laminated and carried. Plain white paper, the kind you'd find in any printer. The message written in blue ballpoint pen, "I can't do this. Please give her a good life. I've kept this in my wallet since the day I found Emma." Ethan said quietly, setting the laminated card on the bed beside the birth certificate. "I look at it almost every day. At first I hoped I'd recognize the handwriting somewhere somehow, that I'd find Emma's mother and give her a chance to explain. As the years went by, it became, I don't know, a reminder of where Emma came from, of the choice her mother made." He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo, the laminated note beside Vanessa's signature from last night's incident report side by side. The similarity was undeniable. I held the laminated card up to the light. The handwriting was unmistakably Vanessa's, the same loops and slants I'd seen on birthday cards and grocery lists for 30 years. The same distinctive way she crossed her lowercase t's, barely lifting the pen. The same slight backward slant on her capital letters. Even the pressure of the pen, heavier on downstrokes, lighter on curves, matched perfectly. Emma was found in the early hours of January 31st, 2018. Ethan said, watching my face. She was exactly 3 days old. Someone had left her right after she was discharged from the hospital. Security footage showed a woman in a hooded jacket, but the angle was wrong. We never got a clear image. I traced the words with my finger through the laminate. "I can't do this." "Vanessa disappeared in early June 2017, I said slowly, my mind assembling the timeline. "She told me she needed a year abroad for her MBA. I realize now she left just as her pregnancy would have started to show." Ethan pulled out more documents. June 2017 through March 2018. 9 months. That gave her just enough time to hide the pregnancy, give birth in secret, and recover before coming home. The math was brutal and precise. Vanessa had never gone to London. She'd been 4 months pregnant when she left Chicago, barely showing easy to hide under the right clothes. She'd fled to Portland, Oregon instead, across the country, 2,000 miles away, far enough that no one from Chicago would accidentally run into her. A city large enough to disappear into where hospital staff wouldn't question a Jane Doe giving birth alone. She'd spent her entire pregnancy hiding on the other side of the country, given birth in a hospital where no one knew her real name. And abandoned Emma just 3 days later before returning home, as if nothing had happened. "She came back in March," I whispered, acting perfectly normal. She never said a word. Did she seem different? I thought back. Summer 2017, before she left, Robert had just been diagnosed with cancer. We'd spent July and early August in and out of oncology appointments, terrified and desperate for good news. I'd barely registered when Vanessa announced she was leaving for London in August. By spring 2018, when she returned, the cancer was already spreading. I'd been consumed with Robert's care, with keeping the company running, with pretending everything would be fine when we both knew it wouldn't. Had Vanessa seemed different, quieter maybe, thinner? I'd assumed it was stress about her father's illness. I'd been so blind. Ethan showed me photographs of Emma, dozens of them chronicling her growth from a 3-day-old infant to the bright-eyed 6-year-old I'd seen in last night's picture, learning to walk. First day of kindergarten, holding up crayon drawings with fierce pride. "She loves art," he said softly, "and questions. She asks about everything. Why is the sky blue? Where do stars go during the day? What happens to caterpillars inside their cocoons?" He smiled. "She's brilliant and stubborn and kind. She shares her snacks with kids who forget theirs. She cried for a week when our neighbor's cat died." My throat ached. "She sounds wonderful." "She is." He looked at me directly. "She deserves to know she has a grandmother, and you deserve to know her." I stared at the birth certificate again. Jane Doe, as if Emma had been born from nothing, as if she didn't have a family, a history, a grandmother who would have loved her from the first moment if only she'd known. "What do we do now?" I asked. Ethan closed the folder. "First, we need to verify the biological connection, a DNA test. And if it confirms, when it confirms," he corrected gently, "then we decide together. You, me, and a lawyer, because Vanessa doesn't get to erase Emma. Not anymore." I looked at the photo of Emma holding her stuffed rabbit, her whole face alight with joy. My granddaughter. I want to meet her, I said. As soon as possible, after we handle the legal situation with Vanessa. Ethan's jaw tightened. After we make sure she can never hurt you or Emma again. I nodded. Then let's finish this. 16 hours after I'd collapsed on that backstage floor, Vanessa walked into my hospital room. No flowers, no apology, just her phone in one hand and a leather portfolio under her arm. The board is asking about succession timelines. She said, not even looking at me. We need to discuss next steps. I stared at her, too stunned to speak. The monitors beside my bed beeped steadily while my daughter, who'd watched me fight for breath, talked about quarterly plans as if nothing had happened. You're serious, I finally managed. She glanced at me, irritated. You're fine now, aren't you? Everything worked out. Can we focus on what matters? That's when I understood. She genuinely believed I'd manufactured a crisis for attention, and she'd been right to ignore it. Sit down, Vanessa. Something in my voice made her pause. I reached for my phone, found the video Ethan had sent me. What are you... Sit down. She sat jaw tight. I pressed play and turned the screen toward her. I watched her face as she watched herself, saw the moment she recognized her own voice. You're being dramatic. This is theater. Saw her expression shift as the video showed me reaching for the wall, my knees giving way. Saw something flicker, fear, shame, when she appeared on screen standing motionless while others rushed to help. When it ended, silence stretched between us. I panicked. She said, finally defensive. I thought you were exaggerating. You've done it before. I collapsed in front of 150 people. My voice stayed calm. You had my medication. You refused to give it to me. You told everyone I was faking. That's not your twisting. There's video evidence. You watched me fall and did nothing. Her face flushed with anger. You want to talk about what I've done. What about you? You spent my entire childhood married to that company. Never at my school plays, never interested in what I cared about. Always the business, always Dad's legacy, never me. So forgive me if I'm not perfect when my manipulative mother stages another scene. The words struck deep. She was right about some of it. I hadn't been perfect. I'd missed things, prioritized work when maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe Vanessa had gotten lost while Robert and I built our empire. But then I thought of Emma, 3 days old, left in the cold. I know about the baby, I said quietly. Vanessa went sheet white. What? Emma, your daughter, my granddaughter, the child you abandoned in Portland in February 2018. You have no proof. I have her birth certificate, the note you left. The handwriting matches documents you signed at my gala. I kept my voice steady. I know everything, Vanessa. She exploded, standing, shouting denials and threats overlapping. This isn't your business. You're trying to control me like always. You have no right. I pressed the call button. The nurse who appeared wasn't alone. A woman in a dark suit followed mid-40s sharp eyes ID badge at her belt. Mrs. Sinclair. The woman's voice carried authority. I'm Detective Maria Santos, Chicago Police Department, Elder Abuse Unit. The hospital social worker contacted us this morning. Vanessa's rage shifted to panic. This is ridiculous. I'm calling my lawyer. You're welcome to, Detective Santos said evenly. But first, I need to ask you about the Drake Hotel last night. Vanessa looked between us, control cracking. You set me up. I trusted you with my life, I said softly. You chose to let me suffer. She headed for the door, but Santos blocked her path. Ms. Sinclair, the detective said, tone, making it clear this wasn't optional. I need you to come with me, now. Vanessa shot me one last look, hatred mixed with fear. You'll regret this, Mother, all of it. Then she was gone, Santos guiding her out. I sat alone in the sudden quiet, staring at the empty doorway. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt hollow. My daughter, gone. 2 days after the confrontation, I met with David Brennan in his office overlooking Michigan Avenue. The DNA results had come back that morning. I'd stared at the numbers until they blurred 99.97% probability that I was Emma's biological grandmother. The paper made it official, but I'd known the truth the moment I'd seen her photograph. She had Robert's eyes, my mother's smile, the Sinclair jaw that showed up in every generation. She was ours, and Vanessa had thrown her away. Brennan laid out the legal strategy like a battlefield commander planning an assault. We file for emergency custody based on abandonment. Vanessa relinquished parental rights when she left Emma at that hospital 6 years ago, even if she didn't do it officially. We'll also petition for a restraining order. She's demonstrated she's a danger to you. What about the gala? I asked. What she did to me? That's trickier. He pulled out a legal pad covered in notes. Illinois law defines elder abuse as knowingly causing or permitting harm to someone 60 or older. The video Ethan recorded is damning, but Vanessa's attorney will argue she believed you were exaggerating your symptoms, that you had a backup dose, that she didn't intend serious harm. My hands curled into fists. She watched me collapse. I know, and that's why Detective Santos is building a separate case. He glanced at his phone. Actually, she wants to talk to you. She called while you were on your way here. 5 minutes later, Santos was on speakerphone. Mrs. Sinclair, we've been digging into your daughter's finances. Papers rustled in the background. She's in trouble. Deep trouble. I exchanged a glance with Brennan. What kind of trouble? Gambling? High-stakes poker games mostly? Some casino credit lines that went unpaid. She owes money to people who don't file lawsuits. When you don't pay, they file teeth. Santos paused. We pulled your bank records with the warrant you authorized. Vanessa's been making transfers from your accounts for the past 6 months, starting in April, right around when you announced your retirement timeline. Small enough to avoid automatic flags, but they add up. My stomach dropped. How much? $750,000. The room spun. I gripped the edge of Brennan's desk. How did I not see this? I whispered. Santos's voice was gentle. You gave Vanessa limited access to help with your retirement transition. She had legitimate reasons to be moving money around, consolidating accounts, setting up trusts, preparing estate documents. The transfers were labeled as estate planning fees and retirement account reorganization. To a casual observer reviewing quarterly statements, they looked like normal business. Brennan added, she routed them through what appeared to be legitimate financial planning firms. Shell companies, as it turns out, but the names looked professional. Wellington Estate Services, Sinclair Legacy Trust Management. You'd have no reason to question them without digging deeper. I closed my eyes. Of course, I'd been so consumed with the company handover with speeches and board meetings and 40 years of legacy to package into talking points. I'd reviewed my quarterly statements in May and August, seen line items that looked like exactly what they were supposed to be retirement preparation, and moved on. She waited until you were vulnerable, Santos said, distracted, trusting her to help. The transactions were authorized with a power of attorney, Santos continued. The same POA she tried to get you to sign at the gala, except this one is dated 3 months ago and the signature is yours, or close enough to pass a casual inspection. I never signed that, I said. We know. We had a forensic document examiner compare it to your actual signature. It's a forgery. A good one, but a forgery. Brennan leaned forward. So we have elder financial abuse on top of everything else. Yes, and that's a Class 1 felony in Illinois when the amount exceeds $100,000. We can prove intent means an opportunity. She had access to your accounts through the retirement planning. She knew your signature well enough to fake it, and she had motive $750,000 in gambling debts. I thought about all those years building Sinclair properties, all those deals, closed buildings, developed risks taken, and my own daughter had been stealing from me while pretending to help prepare for my retirement. There's more, Santos said. The forged POA wasn't just for transferring money. It gave her medical decision-making authority. If you'd been incapacitated at the gala, if you'd had a stroke or gone into cardiac arrest, she would have had legal control over your care. The implication hung in the air like poison gas. She was setting up to let me die, I said flatly. Or to have you declared incompetent, Brennan added. Either way, she'd control your assets, the company, the estate, everything. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan Emma's asking about you. Can we set up a visit soon? I looked at the message for a long moment, then back at Brennan and the speakerphone. What do we do now? We set a trap, Santos said. We invite Vanessa to a meeting. Your attorney, her attorney me, observing. We present the evidence and see how she reacts. If she admits to anything on the record, especially about the gala, we can add elder endangerment charges. And if she stays silent, then we proceed with the financial abuse charges and the custody petition. You'll get Emma either way. But if we can get an admission about the medication refusal, we can ensure Vanessa never gets near either of you again. I thought about Emma's smile, about the life she deserved, safe-loved, free from the shadow of a mother who'd abandoned her, and a grandmother she'd never known. Set up the meeting, I said. The call came on Thursday afternoon. I'd been home from the hospital for 5 days, and my penthouse felt wrong. Quieter. Emptier. The medication bottle sat on my nightstand white pharmacy label against dark wood, and every evening at 8 o'clock, I took my dose with water and the growing certainty that punctuality was the only thing I still controlled. When Detective Santos called, her voice was steady. Mrs. Sinclair, we've built a solid case for financial abuse. The forged documents, the unauthorized transfers, everything's documented. But I'm offering you something more. I sat slowly on the edge of my bed. What do you mean? Justice for what happened at the gala. She paused deliberately. I want to give you the chance to face your daughter again, in a controlled setting, legal counsel present, every word recorded. My stomach twisted. Why would I? Because if she admits intent, even indirectly, we can pursue endangerment charges. Santos's tone softened. And because you deserve to hear her explain herself. Not in an interrogation room, but as your daughter answering to her mother. I closed my eyes. Vanessa's face in that hospital room rose like nausea, cold, unrepentant. When, October 22nd, 5 p.m., the Drake Hotel. The irony burned, the place where everything fell apart. Santos outlined the plan with military precision. The Walton Room, smaller than the Grand Ballroom, but still elegant, still neutral. My attorney, David Brennan, would attend. Vanessa's attorney, Diana Fletcher, would represent her. Audio and video recording. Miranda rights read aloud. What if she refuses to talk? I asked. What if Fletcher tells her to stay silent? Then we proceed with financial abuse charges, Santos said. Your attorney pursues custody in civil court. But Catherine, if she talks, if she tries to justify what she did, we might get enough for endangerment. That's a felony. I thought of Emma, 6 years old. Crayon drawing of 3 stick figures labeled Me, Daddy, and Grandma Kate. I'll do it. An hour later, Ethan called. Santos had contacted him as a potential witness. I want to be there, he said immediately. Not just to testify, to support you. Tears came unexpectedly. Ethan, you've done so much already. Emma's grandmother shouldn't face this alone. I swallowed hard. Then Emma's father shouldn't leave her side for something like this. Stay with her, please. He hesitated, then agreed. Call me the second it's over. I will. The next 2 days blurred. I reviewed evidence until I could recite every transaction, every forged signature, every second of that video. I practiced composure in the bathroom mirror. I wrote talking points on legal pads, tore them up, started over. October 22nd arrived. I dressed in my charcoal suit, the one I'd worn to Robert's funeral. Armor. I drove myself to the Drake. The valet looked at me strangely, probably remembering the ambulance 10 days ago, but I handed him my keys and walked through the lobby where I'd been carried out on a stretcher. At 4:55, I entered the Walton Room. Vanessa sat at the conference table, Diana Fletcher beside her in a burgundy blazer and pearls. My daughter stared at her folded hands. She didn't look up. I took the seat directly across from her. Brennan sat to my right. Detective Santos positioned herself at the head of the table, a small recording device centered in front of her. Santos pressed a button. A red light blinked on. This meeting is being recorded. She began formal and clear. Miss Vanessa Sinclair, you are present as a suspect in an ongoing criminal investigation. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. Vanessa's eyes lifted. For one suspended moment, they met mine. And I saw nothing there at all. If you're still here with me, what do you think happens next? Leave your prediction in the comments before we step into the final confrontation. A quick note before we continue: the next part includes dramatized elements for storytelling and educational purposes. Some details may be fictionalized, and if you'd rather not continue, you're free to stop here. 45 minutes in, and the Walton room felt like a freezer. Brennan had presented everything with surgical precision. The video from the gala, Vanessa turning away, my hand outstretched my collapse. The financial records, $75,000 transferred in careful increments over 6 months. The forged power of attorney documents, signatures analyzed by a forensic expert who'd testified that the handwriting didn't match mine at any measurable point. Vanessa sat across from me, spine-straight face rigid as a mask. She hadn't blinked in minutes. Detective Santos leaned forward. "Miss Sinclair," she said quietly, "why did you refuse to give your mother her heart medication?" Vanessa's answer came too quickly, too polished. I believed my mother was exaggerating to get attention. She has a history of... I couldn't stay silent, not anymore. A history of what Vanessa... My voice cracked. A history of loving you, of building a company I hoped you'd inherit someday. Her eyes finally met mine. The hatred there was so pure it took my breath away. "You love that company more than me." Her voice was ice. "More than Dad. More than anyone." The room went still. Fletcher touched her client's arm in warning, but Vanessa shook her off. "You want the truth." Vanessa leaned forward. "I was drowning. Gambling debts you knew nothing about because you were too busy with quarterly reports to notice I existed. I needed that money. I deserved it after spending 30 years invisible to you. So you forged my signature." Brennan's voice was clinical. He slid another document across the table. "This power of attorney, dated 3 weeks before the gala. Your plan was to incapacitate your mother, have her declared incompetent, and take control of her assets." Vanessa's jaw tightened. "She was going to cut me out. I saw the estate planning documents on her desk. After everything I did, everything I sacrificed, she was going to leave it all to some foundation named after him." The words hit like a slap. "You think you built Sinclair Properties?" I asked softly. "Vanessa, you left the company when you were 24. You've worked there part-time for 6 years total." "I was there." She slammed her palm on the table. "I sat through dinners where you talked about zoning laws instead of my life. I watched Dad waste away while you closed deals. I earned that inheritance by surviving you as a mother." Fletcher stood abruptly. "My client will not answer any further questions." But Vanessa was already on her feet chair, scraping violently backward. She stared down at me, chest heaving. "You want to know about the baby?" The words came out venomous. "Fine. I got rid of it because it was a mistake, just like I was to you." The room tilted. Before I could speak, before I could breathe, Vanessa turned and walked out Fletcher, hurrying after her in a blur of burgundy and pearls. The door slammed. Santos exhaled slowly. "That's enough for endangerment charges. Premeditated intent to cause serious harm to an elder. It's on tape." Brennan gathered his files. "I'll start the emergency custody paperwork tonight." They left together, murmuring about court dates and arraignment schedules. And then I was alone. The Walton room felt enormous. I should have felt victorious. Justice served evidence secured legal wheels in motion. But all I felt was a grief so vast it had no edges. My daughter had just called her own child, my granddaughter, garbage she'd discarded. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands. Emma's face filled the screen, that crayon drawing clutched in her small fists. Me, Daddy, and Grandma Kate. She deserved so much better than Vanessa. Maybe better than me, too. But I'd spend whatever time I had left trying to be worthy of her. The call came at 8:30 the next morning. I'd been awake since 5, watching the sky over Lake Michigan shift from black to gray to pale gold. Sleep felt impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Vanessa's voice. I got rid of it because it was a mistake. Detective Santos didn't waste time on pleasantries. Mrs. Sinclair, Vanessa's attorney, reached out overnight. They want to negotiate a plea agreement. Are you willing to hear the terms? I sat down slowly on the edge of my bed. I'm listening. She'll plead guilty to elder financial abuse. In exchange, the state's attorney will drop the endangerment charge. Santos's tone was neutral professional. Fletcher's arguing we don't have enough to prove intent to cause serious bodily harm. The confession yesterday was emotional but legally ambiguous. My chest tightened. So she walks away? Not entirely. Papers rustled in the background. 3 years suspended sentence, 5 years probation, full restitution of $750,000, and mandatory mental health counseling. She'll have a felony conviction on her record. $750,000. The number still felt unreal, like something from a corporate fraud case, not a family betrayal. That's it? My voice came out sharper than I'd intended. There's one more condition. Santos paused. She has to voluntarily relinquish all parental rights to Emma. No contest to your kinship care petition with Ethan Brooks. Complete termination. The room went very quiet. She knows if we fight this in family court, Emma gets dragged into testimony. Santos continued. Media coverage, trauma. Fletcher advised her to cut her losses here. Vanessa signed the preliminary paperwork an hour ago. I thought of Emma's face in that photo, 6 years old, bright-eyed, drawing pictures of a family she'd never known she had. What's Emma's legal status? I asked. If I agree to this, Brennan's voice joined the call he'd been conferenced in. Ethan retains primary guardianship. He's been her father for 6 years. No court will disrupt that. You'll be granted kinship careship with supervised visitation for the first 6 months. After that, if all goes well, full joint custody. Supervised by whom? A court-appointed social worker. Standard procedure when establishing new parental relationships. Brennan's tone softened. Catherine, this is the fastest path to being part of Emma's life. If we go to trial, we're looking at a year minimum before custody is resolved. I stood and walked to the window. Chicago stretched out below me, the skyline I'd watched grow and change for 40 years. The city Robert and I had built our life in. The city where Vanessa had grown up somewhere along the way, becoming someone I no longer recognized. She doesn't deserve leniency, I said quietly. No, Santos agreed. She doesn't, but Emma deserves peace. I closed my eyes. How will she pay back $750,000? The court will set up a payment plan. Probably 36 months. She'll have to liquidate assets, her car, jewelry, anything of value. The rest will come from garnished wages. If she fails to pay, the suspended sentence gets activated and she goes to prison. 36 months, 3 years of monthly payments, a constant reminder of what she'd done. When's the sentencing? October 28th. Courtroom formality. At that point, the judge will accept the plea and impose terms. There's also a restraining order. 500 feet minimum distance from you and Emma. Violation means immediate incarceration. 500 feet. Vanessa couldn't come near us even if she wanted to. Maybe especially if she wanted to. I agree to the terms, I said. Brennan exhaled. I'll file the acceptance this afternoon. Santos added, For what it's worth, Mrs. Sinclair, you're doing the right thing. After they hung up, I stood at that window for a long time. Justice felt hollow. I'd lost my daughter not to prison bars, but to something darker, some bitterness that had consumed her from the inside until there was nothing left but cruelty and resentment. $750,000 stolen, a child abandoned, a mother left to die on a ballroom floor. I'd never understand why. Maybe I wasn't supposed to. Maybe understanding didn't matter anymore. What mattered was Emma. I picked up my phone and called Ethan. He answered on the second ring. Catherine, when can I meet her? Ethan pauses. After the sentencing. Let's wait until everything's settled. Emma doesn't need to be caught up in court stress. How about the day after October 29th? Catherine's voice steadies. October 29th. I'll be ready. The Cook County Courthouse smelled like marble and old wood. I'd been through security twice, metal detector bag searched the works. My victim impact statement sat folded in my purse. The edges softened from being opened and reread a dozen times over the past 5 days. I'd written it at 3 a.m. when sleep refused to come. Now standing outside courtroom 506, I wasn't sure I had the strength to read it aloud. Brennan touched my elbow gently. You don't have to do this. Yes, I said quietly, I do. Inside the courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Wood-paneled walls, fluorescent lighting, rows of benches, half filled with attorneys and observers. Vanessa sat at the defense table in a navy dress, her posture rigid. Diana Fletcher whispered something to her. My daughter didn't turn around. The bailiff called the court to order. We rose as Judge Monica Reyes entered a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Please be seated. The plea hearing proceeded with bureaucratic efficiency. The charges were read. Vanessa stood when asked and answered in a voice so flat it barely sounded human. How do you plead to the charge of financial exploitation of an elderly person? Guilty, Your Honor. Judge Reyes studied the file before her. Miss Sinclair, you exploited your own mother's trust and vulnerability for financial gain. You showed callous disregard for her health and safety. Over a period of 6 months, you systematically stole $750,000 through forged documents and fraudulent authorizations. She looked up directly at Vanessa. This represents not just theft, but a profound betrayal of the most fundamental bond, that between parent and child. You are fortunate this court is offering leniency given your lack of prior criminal record and your cooperation in avoiding a lengthy trial. Vanessa's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. The terms of your sentence are as follows: 3 years imprisonment suspended, 5 years probation, full restitution of $750,000 to be paid within 36 months, 200 hours of community service to be completed at an elder care facility. Perhaps you'll learn something about the dignity you denied your own mother. Mandatory mental health treatment for the duration of your probation, with proof of attendance, submitted monthly to your probation officer. Judge Reyes closed the file with a decisive snap. Additionally, a permanent restraining order. You are to maintain a minimum distance of 500 feet from Catherine Sinclair and Emma Rose Brooks at all times. No contact whatsoever except through court-supervised channels. Do you understand these terms? Yes, Your Honor. Judge Reyes turned to Brennan. Does the victim wish to make a statement? I stood. My legs felt distant, like they belonged to someone else. The walk to the microphone took forever. I unfolded the paper with shaking hands and began to read. Your Honor, I came here hoping for an apology. My voice cracked. I steadied it. I didn't receive one. I once wanted my daughter back. Now I understand I may never have truly had her at all. I looked up. Vanessa's profile was stone. Vanessa saw me as an obstacle, not as a mother. She stole $750,000 from me. She abandoned her own child. She refused to help me when I collapsed, when a single action could have saved my life. I paused. I don't know if she's capable of love, but I know this: she will never have access to me or my granddaughter again. My throat tightened, but I pushed through. I hope someday she finds the help she needs. I hope she finds peace, but I will not sacrifice my safety or Emma's future on the possibility of a change that may never come. I folded the paper and returned to my seat. Judge Reyes asked if Vanessa wished to address the court. Fletcher whispered urgently to her client. Vanessa stood slowly, but when she opened her mouth, nothing came out. No apology, no explanation, just silence. She sat back down. Court is adjourned. Vanessa left through the side door flanked by Fletcher. She never looked back. Outside, reporters swarmed. Brennan handled them while I walked to the parking garage, the autumn wind biting through my coat. It was over. The legal battles, the confrontations, the betrayal. Finished. My phone buzzed. Ethan Emma keeps asking when she gets to meet you. Tomorrow. I typed back with numb fingers. Tomorrow, please. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. The brick house on Orchard Street looked like something from a storybook. 2 stories, white shutters, a maple tree losing its leaves in the small front yard. I stood on the porch clutching a gift bag, 3 children's books about grandmothers and grandchildren I'd spent an hour choosing yesterday. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. The door opened before I could knock. Ethan smiled gently. She's nervous, but excited too. So am I. He led me inside. The living room was small, but warm toys scattered across a well-worn rug, crayon drawings magnetized to the refrigerator, a life built with love in every corner. Blue sofa, overflowing bookshelves, sunlight through lace curtains. And behind that sofa, peeking out with enormous brown eyes, was Emma. 6 years old, dark curls escaping a pink headband, purple dress with stars, clutching something white and fuzzy to her chest. I knelt slowly until I was at her level. Hi, Emma. My voice came out softer than I'd planned. I'm Catherine. I'm your grandmother." She studied me with an intensity that reminded me painfully of Vanessa at that age, cautious, weighing every detail. Ethan crouched beside her. "Remember what I told you, someone very special wanted to meet you." Emma took one small step forward, then another. "This is Cotton." She held up the stuffed rabbit worn gray where it had once been white, one ear flopping. "Daddy gave him to me when I was really little." "He's wonderful," I smiled. "Cotton is a perfect name." Her shoulders relaxed slightly. "Do you want to see my pictures?" "I'd love to." She grabbed my hand, her fingers so small they barely wrapped around two of mine, and pulled me to the refrigerator. A dozen drawings covered the surface. Houses with triangle roofs, rainbow suns, stick figure families. One caught my eye immediately. 3 figures in front of a house. Labels in careful child printing. Me, Daddy, Grandma Kate. My throat closed. "You drew this," I whispered. Emma nodded seriously. "Daddy said you were sick. Are you better now?" I looked at Ethan. He was watching with something like hope in his eyes. "I'm much better," I told her. "And meeting you makes me feel even better." Emma tilted her head considering. Then so quietly, I almost didn't hear. "Are you really my grandmother?" The question broke something open in my chest. "Yes." Tears spilled over. "Yes, sweetheart, I really am." Emma looked at Cotton, then at me. Then she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around my neck. The hug was tentative at first testing, but then her grip tightened. I held her carefully, afraid she might disappear, and cried into her curls, while she patted my shoulder the way children do when they don't quite understand adult sadness, but want to help anyway. When I looked up, Ethan was wiping his eyes. We spent the next hour on the sofa. I read all 3 books aloud, doing different voices until Emma giggled. She leaned against my side, warm and solid and real. We talked about visiting each other every week. Next Saturday, she'd come see my apartment. "It's really tall," I warned. "You can see the whole city." Her eyes went wide, like a princess tower. Exactly like that. Before I left, I turned to Ethan at the door. "Thank you," I said quietly, "for saving her, for loving her when Vanessa couldn't. You're her father in every way that matters." His voice was rough. "She's the best thing that ever happened to me, and I think you'll be the second best thing for her." I walked down the porch steps and turned to wave. Emma stood at the window, pressing her hand against the glass. I pressed mine to match from the outside, 2 palms separated by thin glass and 6 years of absence. She smiled, brilliant, pure, untouched by darkness. That smile was worth everything, because now I had my granddaughter, and I'd spend the rest of my life making sure she knew she was loved. Since Emma officially came into my life, the penthouse had become something it had never been in all my years here at home. On this Saturday morning in late April, I woke not to an alarm but to the soft patter of small feet on hardwood. Emma appeared in my bedroom doorway, her dark curls wild from sleep, clutching the stuffed rabbit. "Grandma Kate, can we make pancakes?" I smiled. 6 months ago, I'd been alone in a hospital bed facing the ruins of my life. Today I was Grandma Kate, and a 7-year-old girl was asking me to make pancakes. "Give me 5 minutes to take my medicine," I said. She padded over and climbed onto the bed beside me, watching with solemn attention as I took my morning pills, including the digoxin I took every evening at 8 p.m., which kept my heart in rhythm. She knew the routine now. She'd learned it the way children learn everything, by watching, by asking questions, by caring. In the kitchen, Emma dragged a stool to the counter and helped me measure flour and crack eggs. She chattered about school, about her friend Lily, about a boy named Marcus, who'd pulled her hair at recess. "What did you do it?" I asked. I told the teacher. Then I told him if he did it again, I'd tell you. I bit back a smile. And what would I do? You'd come to school and give him the look. The look. Apparently, I had a look. Emma had decided it was a superpower. We ate pancakes on the balcony, watching the city wake up below us. The April sun was warm, and for the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. My life had changed in ways I could never have imagined. I'd returned to consulting work part-time, just enough to keep my mind sharp. I'd poured the rest of my energy into the Robert Sinclair Foundation for Elder Abuse Prevention, which had launched in March. And twice a week, I went to cardiac rehab, rebuilding the heart that Vanessa had tried to break. Vanessa. I tried not to think of her often, but she was always there, a shadow at the edge of my new life. 2 months ago, she'd sent a letter through her lawyer, apologizing, asking for a chance to explain, to reconnect. I'd read it once, then filed it away. Brennan had advised me not to respond, and I'd agreed. Some bridges once burned should stay that way. Emma didn't ask about her mother often. When she did, I answered truthfully but briefly. She knew Vanessa had made mistakes. She knew her mother was getting help, and she knew that for now she was safe here with me and with Ethan. Ethan. He'd become more than Emma's father. He'd become my partner in this strange, chosen family we'd built. Today he was picking Emma up at noon for a trip to the zoo. Emma was already planning what animals she'd see. Grandma Kate, she said, sticky syrup on her chin. Can we do this every Saturday? Every Saturday, I promised. And I meant it. By the time we reached the lions, Emma had asked 17 questions. I'd counted. Why do giraffes have such long necks, Grandma Kate? To reach leaves on tall trees, sweetheart. Don't the penguins get cold? They're built for it. Special feathers. Can we get a lion? Ethan laughed. Only if he promises not to eat cotton. Emma considered this seriously, then shook her head. No lions, then. The zoo was packed with families enjoying the April sunshine. Emma navigated crowds like she owned the place, dragging us from exhibit to exhibit with fearless 7-year-old enthusiasm. I'd forgotten what it felt like to see the world this way, every animal a marvel, every fact worth knowing immediately. I watched Ethan with her, patient when she climbed on his shoulders, gentle when she got frustrated the seals weren't performing, attentive when she scraped her knee and needed the Band-Aid he'd packed with the foresight of someone who'd been doing this alone for years. He was a perfect father, and I felt something beyond gratitude, respect, friendship, something close to awe. We found a bench near the seal pool while Emma pressed her face to the glass, mesmerized. Ethan sat beside me with a relieved sigh. Thank you for this, I said quietly. For what you bought the tickets. For letting me be part of her life, for trusting me. He watched Emma point excitedly at a backflipping seal. I was an accountant before Emma, he said suddenly. Did you know that... I shook my head. Decent job. Benefits. Boring as hell. He smiled faintly. When I found her, I tried to keep working, but childcare costs more than I made. I couldn't leave a baby with strangers 12 hours a day, so I quit. Took the part-time position at the Drake because the hours were flexible and there was employee daycare during events. My throat tightened. 6 years. He rubbed his eyes. 6 years of scrambling to pay rent, cutting coupons, buying her clothes at thrift stores, lying awake wondering if I was ruining her life. Ethan, and now she has you. His voice cracked. She has stability, a college fund, a grandmother who makes pancakes and teaches her about buildings, everything I couldn't give her. I squeezed his hand. She always had what mattered most. I said firmly, you. I'm just the grandmother who showed up late. He smiled through tears. Better late than never. If you want to go back, I said carefully, finish your CPA certification, work full-time. I'd be honored to help with Emma, not because you need me to, but because I want to. Because you've earned the right to build your life back. I'll think about it, he whispered. We stayed until closing. Emma fell asleep in the car on the way home, and we carried her up to my apartment. Ethan and I sat on opposite ends of the sofa, her small body stretched between us, and talked in low voices about healing, about what it meant to keep living after everything fell apart. I lost a daughter, I said softly, but I gained something far more valuable, a family I chose, and a family that chose me back. Emma stirred. Love you, Grandma Kate. Love you, Daddy. Then she was out again. Ethan met my eyes. No words necessary. We'd built something beautiful from wreckage, something fragile and fierce and worth protecting. I would guard it with my life. The grand ballroom looked different now. Same crystal chandeliers, same polished floors, same windows overlooking Lake Michigan. But where 16 months ago I'd collapsed in silence and terror tonight, the room echoed with children's laughter and off-key singing of Happy Birthday. January 28th, 2026, Emma's 8th birthday. 30 kids raced between purple and silver balloon clusters. Parents gathered near the dessert table. Emma's teacher chatted with Ethan's co-workers. My former colleagues mingled with neighborhood friends, two worlds woven into one. Ethan and I moved through the chaos like partners who'd been doing this for years. He refilled juice. I supervised crafts. When a kid knocked over presents, we both lunged to catch them laughing when we collided. We were a team now, co-parents in every way that mattered. Emma stood at the center wearing a purple star-covered dress and a paper crown sliding sideways. Her smile outshone every chandelier. I watched her play confident, loved, secure, and felt gratitude so immense it bordered on pain. "Time for cake," Ethan called. Everyone gathered. 8 candles flickered on a castle-shaped cake. Emma closed her eyes, wished, and blew them all out. The room erupted in cheers. "What did you wish for?" I asked. She threw her arms around both of us. "That we stay together forever." Ethan's eyes met mine over her curls. Neither of us spoke. Emma tugged my sleeve. "Read the card, Grandma Kate," out loud. My hands shook slightly as I unfolded it. "To my brave and beautiful Emma," I read. "You saved my life as much as I hope I've enriched yours. You taught me that family isn't always about blood, it's about who shows up when everyone else leaves. I love you more than all the stars in the sky. Love forever, Grandma Kate." Emma hugged it to her chest. "Can I keep this forever?" "I'll laminate it," I promised. By 8 o'clock, Emma had fallen asleep in a velvet chair, chocolate frosting on her cheek. Ethan lifted her carefully, and we moved to the windows. Chicago spread below us. The lake reflected sunset gold. Lights appeared in buildings like stars coming out. 16 months ago, I'd stood here believing I'd lost everything. I'd been wrong. Yes, I'd lost Vanessa. My daughter had chosen bitterness over love, and I couldn't save her from that. I still carried guilt in the quiet hours before dawn. But I'd learned something crucial. I couldn't save her. I could only save myself and Emma. I thought about Robert. How I wished he could see this, see Emma, see the family we'd become from broken pieces. Maybe somewhere he was watching. Maybe he was proud. Emma stirred. "Grandma Kate." "Yes, sweetheart." "Best birthday ever." I kissed her forehead. "Best birthday ever, my love." We stood reflected in the darkening glass, 3 people who'd found each other in ruins and chosen to become something new, not bound by blood or law, just bound by love and the daily decision to show up. This was healing, not forgetting the pain, not pretending the betrayal hadn't happened, but building something beautiful anyway. I'd lost a daughter, but I'd found a family, and I would choose them 1,000 times again. If you're watching this story unfold, you might be living through your own family drama stories right now. Maybe you see yourself in me, a mother who prioritized her career over connection, who built empires but lost her daughter along the way. Don't be like me. Don't wait until you're lying on a ballroom floor gasping for breath to realize what truly matters. I learned 3 painful lessons from my journey through these family drama stories. First, success means nothing if you have no one to share it with. I spent 40 years building Sinclair properties, but the only legacy that matters now is the love I give Emma. Second, betrayal often grows in silence. I ignored Vanessa's pain for years, and it metastasized into cruelty. Pay attention to the people you love before it's too late. Third, healing is possible, but only when you choose it every single day. Grandma stories like mine aren't supposed to start with collapsed hearts and courtroom battles. But God works in mysterious ways. He took my darkest moment and used it to bring Emma into my life. When I thought I'd lost everything, God was already preparing something better. A family built on choice, not blood. These grandma stories teach us that it's never too late to start over. At 68 years old, I'm learning what it means to be present, to listen to love without conditions. Every Saturday morning with Emma is a gift from God. Every bedtime story, every zoo trip, every pancake breakfast, these are the grandma stories I wish I'd had the chance to create with Vanessa. To everyone navigating their own family drama stories, forgiveness is possible. Healing is possible. God can turn your ruins into something beautiful. But you have to show up. You have to choose love every single day. Final note. This content includes dramatized storytelling for educational purposes. Some details are fictionalized, but the lessons and messages are entirely valuable. If this style isn't for you, that's okay. Please seek content that better fits your needs.